Hey, everybody, this is Nathaniel Provencio on the Community Connection, and this is a special day for me. I have on the show Joe Lally. He is one of the most inspirational bass players, musicians, artists in the world. He is one of the founding members of this band right here, Fugazi, back in the day, and he is I don't know how I got you to say yes, Joe, but thank you so much, brother, for being on this show. We're going to talk about punk rock, musicianship, students, tutors, education, connection with legal. We're going to talk about all this stuff, man. And but first and foremost, I hope your day is going awesome. I hope this has been a really good day for you.
It's been a stellar day, and I'm happy to be here. Thanks
Man,
for
that's
having me.
awesome. Are you in like Springfield or
No, I'm in Northwest Washington, D.C.
Northwest Washington, D.C.? Um, that's kind of like our connection, like we were talking about a little bit. I've lived in 25 years in the DMV area. And
Mhm.
I was talking to you, like one of the reasons why I moved there was because I was hoping to see a Fugazi show if I were to move to DC. And I'm still waiting. I'm still waiting to check that out, man. But currently right now, Joe, you're a bass instructor. Can you talk a little bit
Yeah,
about that? You're a teacher, man. You're a teacher.
yeah. It sort of fell into place because COVID came along and shut everything down.
Yeah.
So it was 2020, and the Mesthetics had been doing a lot of playing, and we were kind of due for a break anyway. So that part of COVID wasn't so bad for the band.
Sure.
I think we needed to like sort of lay off for a bit, let people want to see us again. But I did not have work. I
Mm,
was working as a runner for IMP Productions, which is the 930 Club and the independent promoter
mm.
of all kinds of shows in the DC area. And they built the Anthem and they have these other venues they work out of. But I was a driver. I was driving bands,
Wow.
picking them up, or I was going to buy things. So it's called a runner. It's
Yeah.
apparently one of the worst jobs ever. But I needed a job so bad. I didn't really notice that part so much until I
Wow.
passed it on to someone else. And then I had jumped over to a box office at the Lincoln Theater where you sell tickets
Mm,
for all of these shows. And I thought I had just like, oh, okay, I've settled into the job I have when I come home from tour.
mm.
And COVID came and I lost that job.
Oh, wow.
So
Gee whiz.
it was pretty bad. I had only done it for a couple of months and then it was gone.
Wow.
And my partner, who is much smarter than I, Antonia
Yep.
Rico, she said, I think you better start trying to do these lessons online because
Wow.
we have got to pay the rent.
Wow.
So I started to formulate this as a concept and just tried to understand how can I go about doing this, And it was obviously a pretty huge challenge, but talking about what it is to be a bass player or to be in a band, I mean, there are so many things
Mm.
that I can talk to people about, but I was actually showing myself learning theory. So I had something very technical that I
Mm.
could talk about. So much of my playing, I don't know what I know. Like I
Right.
don't know how to talk about all the things I learned by playing.
Mm.
So it is quite a challenge. And I would say that the people who first met with me, didn't necessarily get as refined a version of me teaching theory as I'm able to now. So I've learned a lot by teaching it.
That's it. That's fascinating, man. Well, here's some comfort for you. The best teachers are the best learners, right?
Mhm.
And it's like you've never really arrive as a teacher. I mean, it's a craft. So if you stop learning, that's when you stop being effective, you
Sure.
know? And so like so
Absolutely.
I can imagine. Well, did you have any formal lessons as growing up with the bass? How'd you even discover bass of all the instruments, right?
Yeah, and that's the thing about like when it came time to teach it, I was like, I have never really learned anything formally. So I didn't even trust myself to figure out what someone was playing on a particular record. So me and a friend had decided we were going to start a band, and he said he would sing, and I said, okay, I will play bass because I was always drawn to this instrument.
Huh.
And I think the both of us were. And he often wrote some things like just trying to put notes together. And the thing is that I didn't pick up the bass till I was 19.
Mm.
I definitely feel that we are drawn to our instrument by its vibration,
I
its
agree.
frequency. You
Yep.
know, it's either like this low thing or this high thing or whatever it is you're feeling and hearing. And you start to see music shaped around the instrument that you love and are
Mm.
drawn to. You start to hear how that drops into place alongside of the other instruments. And then that instrument sort of stands out to you. Um, but we were intrigued with repetition. And even though punk rock wasn't that old,
Hmm.
time that we were finally picking up our instruments, all of these things had happened in a way. And there was like hardcore music that
Mm.
was local music, and that was already changing. And I have to say that a lot of my um, listening wasn't really centered around hardcore music at the time that I was
Sure.
picking up the bass. I was trying to use a particular scene and kind of music as an entry point, that we were trying to jump into what those bands were doing because you could book shows and
Yeah.
play at those shows. But I had been listening seriously since I was 9 or 10.
Mm.
Came from a lot of R&B and soul and funk. So it was like Otis Redding and James Brown is where it kind of began for me. And that moved into Sly and Family Stone and the Ohio Players and just all Black American music. I mean, I'm a
Wow.
I'm a musician because of Black America, and I'm probably still here because of Black America.
So
So
were those artists that your family listened to? Because like for me, I had all of my dad's albums. I had his what they call it, 8 tracks. Remember those 8 tracks? You know what I mean?
yeah,
And
yeah,
and
yeah.
I remember just listening to Rick James
Uh-huh.
over and over and over. And what was it about Rick James? It's the freaking bass line, man.
Yeah.
And I just remember listening. My dad had this album. It was a Rick James like greatest hits. This was like in the 80s. I remember the
Yeah.
album was called Reflections. It was
Okay.
the baddest ass album, but it was that bass. And my father was a musician. So he would listen to it. He would play the drums. I wanted to be like my dad. So I would play the drums, but it was that bass, man, that Rick James was a hook. And then I started listening to, and because that's what my dad listened to, Motown, Muscle Shoals inspired
Okay.
music, all that funk, Booker T and the MGs. I remember listening to all that.
Sure.
And then I went to a flea market and got a Rush album called 2112.
Hmm.
And then that blew my mind. I'd never heard anything like that before. So,
Right.
yeah, so was it your family's music that you would listen to?
It,
Like,
I mean, I'm the youngest in a family of four
hmm,
kids, and my oldest sibling, my sister Kathy, she was 9 years older than me. And so there was her records
hmm,
around that really like kind of introduced the rock thing. But that kind of came later.
hmm,
I was drawn into music through my next door neighbor, kid my same age I went to school with, but had three older brothers,
hmm,
and they just had this massive like funk and soul background thing. So we were going because they were older, they were able to take us when we were like 11. They were taking us to see these afternoon matinee shows
oh,
at
sure,
this
sure.
venue out in Maryland, and we saw the OJs, the Spinners, the Jackson Five, the Isley Brothers.
That's
We
awesome.
got to see that stuff, and that was just my introduction. So I'm listening to all that kind of music. Now I'm seeing those bands. So even though it's quite a while before I pick up the bass, I not only have all of this funk and soul and R&B background, but in junior high school, I try to understand this hard rock thing, and
Yeah,
that's when you find Rush. But then I go through my sister's records,
yeah,
then I find Zeppelin and
yeah,
Aerosmith and some other hard, some heavy rock things stick with me, Sabbath and stuff. But I'm pretty much by the end, a couple of years of that in junior high school, and I'm ready for something else.
yeah.
Thank God, like I'm introduced to punk rock when I go to a different high school than my neighborhood is bused to.
Oh,
I go
wow.
to this art. art class that is 3 periods a day. So it's like you have to kind of, the art teacher from my junior high school referred me, to this, and then you get accepted or not accepted.
Yeah.
And so I got into that, and I had like the first half of the day was 3 periods of art. So it was, that kind of pulled me in to another listening world, because that's where I get turned on to punk rock and other people in that class. Or there's a guy who's playing drums in a local band
Yeah.
that eventually I go see, and then I'm following them around,
Yeah.
that kind of thing. Um, but it's, but yeah, when I pick up the bass, I'm really bringing in what's deep inside me, and that is the first music I'm listening to. So a lot of R&B and funk and soul, it's funk is kind of, without
Yeah.
me thinking about it, that's what I can sort of easily go to. So something about that is coming into this, I don't know, hardcore
Yeah.
kind of era of music that we're trying to do in 83 is when I'm picking up the.
Wow.
So what that music really sounded like, hell, I don't know. We're just trying to write the songs that we can write.
Well, Joe, I got to tell you, I remember after that Rush 2112, and then like pretty much after that, it was grunge started kind of doing its thing. This is for me. I'm 47, little younger. And then I hear "Smells Like Teen Spirit" for the first time, and it blew
Yeah,
my mind away. I mean, it was just fascinating. And then you're like, okay, Dave Grohl, wasn't he the drummer for Scream? Wasn't that in DC? You start making those connections. And
sure.
then I was like, well, who else is from DC? Like, I don't know any bands from DC. It's like, oh, the Bad Brains. Oh,
Mhm.
that's amazing. Well, who
Yeah,
else is from this band called Fugazi? And then I'm like, okay. And then my friend Kevin let me listen to this song called Merchandise.
mhm.
And I was like, I've never heard anything like that. And then he said, well, if you like that, listen to this song called Waiting Room. And Joe,
Mhm.
when you start, I'm sure you've heard this a billion times, but but this is the first time you're going to hear this from me. When you started playing, you
Yeah,
could feel the funk and the soul in that bass line. And for me, there were no punk bands that had anything like that sound. So it makes perfect sense that your exposure to African American music and the sound and that funk and that feel, it was shining through with your bass lines, man. I don't know if that was purposeful or what, if that was just part of
I
your
think,
DNA that came out.
yeah, I mean, Ian and I writing, those first couple of records is a lot of like, there's a lot of Ian, and then me adding to him or introducing ideas. But that's what I'm doing. If he plays something, then I either come in with, and I really don't, it's 4 dots, 4 strings. I'm
Sure.
not like aware of any too much of like even what notes I'm playing. And
Wow.
I'm just trying to like add to what he's doing. But yeah, it's really, when you're just floating on intuition,
Yeah.
you know, and instinct, then you are really just drawing off of what I now think of as more is what you've stored away in memory.
Yeah.
And what you've stored away in memory is what you've loved and what you've listened to so much when you were younger, because that struck you, that has stayed with you because it
Wow.
started when your mind is forming still, right? When you're
Yeah.
younger, and all that stays with you so deeply that you carry that, to this day. I carry all that stuff, I think. And then all the punk stuff that started to make me think, oh, I can do a band.
Yeah.
It's those first bands you hear that you can tell they kind of don't know what they're doing.
Oh yeah.
Sounds really
Absolutely.
cool. And
Yeah.
it pulls you in to go like, hey, wait a minute. I can do this with my friends. And I didn't, it still took me a couple of years to find, people to do that with. But I really started thinking about that in the late 70s as I
Wow.
heard those first bands, that made me think that way.
Do you share that with your students? About the
Oh,
technical versus
definitely.
the, you know what I mean? Is because that to me, it's like, I can do C and major, whatever, and I can do all the notes, but like if there's no feeling there, then
Oh,
it's
yeah.
really just then why bother? Just program it on Fruity Loops. So how do you teach that?
Definitely. I mean, I definitely point out to people, because if you're trying to show people, like, the one formal thing that I'm trying to bring people in is theory. but I have gotten to the point where, because it's, that becomes really, I hate to say boring or dull,
Sure.
but if you're just showing people scales and you need to know the order of these scales that all fit together, what you're really learning is where the natural notes are on the fretboard. Where is C, D, E, F, G, A, B, or
Hmm.
A, B, C, D, E, F, G?
Mm.
There's only 7 notes
7 notes, brother.
that you have to identify the pattern of, but it teaches you to play in major and minor. Now, that's
Yeah.
something I never understood, and I wish. So, what part of what I'm doing when I'm teaching is what I wish someone had showed me when I was
Mm.
20. You
Mm.
know, that's what I really want to be able to do for people. If you don't do anything else with me, and we just meet this once,
Yeah.
check out where the notes fall on the fretboard.
Wow.
Show yourself each note like is the beginning of a scale if you play alphabetically.
Right.
And those all keep you playing in tune. But there are 7 notes. People only talk about 2 of them. And those 2 notes, C and A, are
Yeah.
shaping major and minor for you. And
Wow.
if you just start with that one thought, there's a lot you get to play around with on your own.
That's awesome. I'm a stupid drummer.
Well,
I mean,
we all,
you know what I mean? This is like, thank God I can't read notes, and I got like shorthand, so like all I could do was just like feel. And I remember in high school, man, I joined the marching band, right? And they were like, "All right, here's the music. You got to sight read," and I couldn't read at all, and I didn't, and I was lazy, and I didn't want to learn, so I would just listen to the sound one time, and I'd be like, oh, "I got that shit," and then I would just fake it the whole time, right? I faked it for like 3 years. I hope my band teachers know. His name's Rob. I hope he's not
that's
listening.
so great, though.
Yeah, yeah, and but because like the best musicians are the best listeners,
Yeah.
the best teachers are the best listeners too, right? So learners,
I mean,
listeners, man.
so trying to get that across to people and trying to understand how did I learn? Just trying to be more aware of that. But more importantly, what I've come to understand about teaching people is how do they see?
Mm,
How do they hear? How do they visualize
mm,
what it is that we're talking about? What it is
mm.
that's going on? How are they taking this in? And it's so important that I actually assess each person that I meet.
Wow.
So each beginning of teaching someone is based on what is going on and like what are they asking for. I have a
Mm,
lot of guitar players who've moved to bass. I have a lot of bass players who played for years in bands and now have the time to try to understand better what it is they are doing.
wow. Wow.
So
That's
when
great.
you say you're a stupid drummer, I understand what you mean because of course we're not really stupid. It's that
Right.
we don't understand how to talk technically about what we do. Like I don't know.
Yeah.
There's so much stuff. I still don't know how to
Yeah.
talk technically about time, about
Mm,
tempo, and what we're doing with the drummer. But I do know from the beginning that I'm actually trying to get the student to see the role of what they're doing is married to the drummer.
yes.
What we do in a song is a dance with the drummer all
Right.
the way.
Right.
The drummer is always thinking about his interaction with the bass. Bass player is always thinking about, isn't we complete each other?
Oh, I love it.
This interaction and to me that's a huge part of how they're seeing what they're doing. Music is in the air, man. It's
I love it.
invisible.
It is. It's right.
It's vibration. I mean, this opens up a lot because I will go into quantum physics. I will go
Wow.
into like, vibration is everything.
Yeah, man.
The oldest sages that have written things about what they were meditating on brought
Yeah.
them to everything is consciousness.
Mm,
And consciousness is vibration, and vibration is information. So, what
mm.
appears to be the emptiness of the universe is actually filled with information that is there to be accessed. I mean, music is nothing short of like, everything to me
I
in the
I love
sense.
it. I love it.
Okay. So,
I
I,
love
I
it.
do try to go there because what you're doing when you're playing is you're really trying to express. And if you start to see that ability to access, literally all things are
Mm.
accessible if they are all sort of determined at some frequency of vibration. Then you're
Wow.
in there doing it with your instrument, and you're trying to express that thing.
Joe, how come you're not doing a TED talk on this? This is I've never heard someone
Uh,
so eloquently describe bring artistry and quantum physics together, man. Dude, you
it's
you, you got to share this stuff.
it's just the things that I spent some time when we lived in Italy where I just wasn't going to tour. I was
Mm.
kind of running out of money, and touring was like, I may make money, but boy, I can't afford to lose money.
Yeah.
And then we eventually came back because I just could not survive there.
Mm.
Really need a bass player in Italy. So we came back, but um, part of what I did then was just start to like look online and study things I was interested in.
Yeah.
And so I kept following like a book that brought me to another book that brought me to another book, and that kind of stuff just led to this, you know, emerging of what is frankly shamanism, which
Mm.
I just found a link to quantum physics within shamanism.
I
I
love it.
there's a lot to go into here, which I won't bother to, but I just found the connection through all of the things I was interested in. And
Mm.
part of that, I think, is just how I see it, and I think it's how we see whatever thing we're interested in, and the
Yeah,
things that we like. I think we're actually going to bring them all together
I
in
agree.
whatever way we want,
I,
because
I I agree, man. Jeez,
that's how we make sense of the world.
I love it. So you've got, as a musician, this is a question that I'm interested about. There's almost like, I don't know, maybe three pockets. You've got the pocket of practice, and I know that you, like, from what I understand, Fugazi, relentless practice, like 6 hours a day, like that's from what I understand, like a lot of practice. That's what I hear, right? So there's the
It
practice
was a
element,
lot.
a
It
lot.
was
There's
a
a
lot, and we always wrote.
and you always writing, yeah.
That time was really for writing until we were ready to go on tour, and then we would have to go through all the material we had
Mm.
up to that point. So
Wow,
eventually there were pages on the wall that covered all the albums of songs. There may
wow,
be a couple songs we didn't play live, we just didn't like anymore, which is
yeah,
really funny. But and just go like, okay, those are out. But there were but the majority of the songs were there because there was no set list. We had to be able to play the three records we'd written or the five records we'd written, whatever point we were at.
yeah, man. Gee whiz, that's so that practice pocket, and then
Yep.
you had the recording, like the alchemy. It's an art and alchemy of the recording process, and then there's the performance.
Mhm.
What was your favorite? I mean, did you have a favorite? Like,
Well, I mean, writing to perform things live is why I do this.
hmm,
So I want to write songs because I want to perform them in front of people. There's something missing if that doesn't happen. So if an album doesn't get made, I will survive.
wow,
You know what I mean?
hmm,
Like if you can write songs with the people and you got a whole set of material you can go play in front of people, like what needs to happen is happening.
hmm,
To me, that's like the purpose of writing the music. Being able to write a record is like a whole other thing about getting the art down,
yeah,
and documented or for posterity or however you want to look at it, but it still is like making a painting. And
hmm,
I still see the canvas of those songs you've written to be side A and side B,
hmm,
35 some minutes of music. It doesn't have to be that long, but the way you shape side A and side B to make a record that you love, like the records you love,
yeah,
like and is part of the art.
yeah,
And it's to me, it's actually another thing that's a benefit that you get that, like I'm fortunate that I get that. I get to
wow,
make a record.
wow,
But to me, it's really like finding the people to be able to write the thing with the music with, and then be able to record it is fantastic. But man, I want to do this with people. That's
wow.
what this is for. That's like that ties together everything else we were talking about, John,
Sure.
quantum physics and all of it.
Yes,
That's where it's
absolutely.
taking place when everyone's together, their attention not unlike meditation, is a
Mm,
group focus on the sound, on the music. And that's when we're not separated from each other anymore. We're actually together with attention. And
wow.
that's why we all, to me, that's why we all get addicted to music. We want to keep going back and having that experience because we don't have that experience
Mm,
as a group of people. And
no,
that's
we don't.
where shamanism, is often about something that takes place with a group of people, and the shaman is the guide.
Mm,
Shaman is a guide, and shamans take people through this healing in
mm,
that sense. And so I think there's this group possibility of healing when people are together, whether you're in the audience or you're in the band.
sure.
You're a part of this thing if you will dedicate your attention to this thing.
Was that a, I don't know, vision or mission of either Fugazi or any of the bands that you're in to say we are delivering we're bringing quantum physics together through this experience? Is that intentional?
I didn't really know. I mean, I had to ask. I sought out the answer to understand what this was when Fugazi stopped playing because I still and now Fugazi has stopped playing and I have a 1-year-old daughter,
Oh, wow.
and I'm like, what on earth is going on? Like
Yeah,
the
right.
thing that I do, and now it
That's
isn't.
that's right.
And so I had to understand, why do I have to do this still? Because I
Mm,
could feel that I had to do it. All these songs were still coming out of me, but I had no way to understand how to do it without those other three people because
wow.
I learned to do that with those people specifically. So,
Wow.
and I had to all this stuff I had to answer for myself to
Mm,
understand why I needed to do this still. And this, over a number of years became things that I looked into, and I came up with putting pieces together that brought this into a place. But you have to understand
mm.
the same intuitive, instinctual like guide that brings me into doing it now that
Mm.
I was doing it before without knowing
Wow.
how to
Wow.
put my finger on what that was. Because as an audience member, I had already experienced it. It
Wow.
had been shown to me. There are just so many like, Cramps shows and seeing pop and seeing the Bad Brains and the Obsessed. And I mean, there's people who do things to you that you just can't understand. I saw an Iggy Pop show the first time in 1980.
Oh,
That stayed
wow.
with me for years, trying to understand what it is, what was it that happened? Like
Iggy is a shaman. He is a
that's
shaman.
kind of the point,
Yeah.
like that's kind of like where that became such a very clear thing. How was this person communicating something so deeply to me that it made me think about that performance for years? So that is the job of
Mm.
the shaman. The shaman is supposed to actually go and kind of wake up
Yeah.
people in the tribe and kind of keep them on their toes about, because you look at them and you kind of go like, well, what is that?
Yeah.
That's just another person, but it's not.
Mm. Mm.
How are they able to? And so that person's life is in preparation to keep people on their toes about what is in front of them, to keep their awareness, their
It's
heightened.
almost like, oh my gosh. I mean, that's a such a fascinating insight. It's almost like, Joe, like when you watch that band, when you watch that band, it's just transcending time, space, or whatever. It's almost like they're instruments, like that something bigger than them is going through them,
Sure.
and they're just kind of like conduits of energy that's connecting with the audience and the moment and the time. um, I I remember like the first like real punk rock band show that I saw, and it wasn't an Iggy Pop or anything. I think it was like a band called like the Suicide Machines out of Detroit. I had like a pop.
Sure.
Oh
Yeah,
my
yeah.
gosh, do you remember
Yeah, it
them?
doesn't matter who you see. Yeah.
Yeah. And anyway, it's just like wow. Like I would have like, and it just sounds like I gotta be like that. But but I've watched a lot of Fugazi shows. I've watched a lot of you play. You have an interesting presentation style. Like when you watch like a Fugazi show, like Guy is just like an animal. I mean, it's
Yeah.
amazing. Ian's all over the place. Canty's you're so in the pocket and very locked in, but there's a lot going on. Can you talk a little bit about your
Well,
presentation style?
I have to say, like, as you know, as a musician at that point in Fugazi, I mean, I could not really move around much while I played. Like, I just
Wow.
part of not knowing what I was doing meant that I playing, really is meditation. And I understood about 1989, I did yoga for the first time because
Hmm.
somebody suggested a class and I went to a Kundalini yoga class. And, I started to understand on an unconscious level that
Hmm.
that's what's happening when we play. Because if my attention is not anywhere else
Hmm.
in the moment, then I will be able to deliver what is necessary. But not
Wow.
knowing technically what I was doing, I really had to keep my mind open. Like a lot of stages Fugazi went on, I got on stage and cleaned at least my area of the stage
Oh, wow.
because I found very distracting objects were distracting to the playing. If I found myself, I continuously look at that object, and
Like
it's like
a
a bottle
glass of
cap,
water. That
yeah,
shit's got to
or an old
go.
paper, a
Oh,
plastic cup like crushed into the
nope.
ground, or
It's got to go.
gum,
Gum.
gum,
Ooh,
or
ooh, got to
just like a
go.
piece of, duct tape that's, I mean, I could just get rid of it, Anyway, so it's weird, but anyway, I'm standing still a lot in that band because I'm literally just trying to keep everything going in my mind. Everything is happening for me through the sheer force of will of my
Wow.
mind because I don't know how to talk about most things that are going on. And I allowed the music of that band because it was part of my
Yeah.
vision of it to that I was actually keeping time.
Mm.
Brendan could leave.
Wow.
And I
Okay.
may not be that good at it, but
Yeah.
because if Brendan started to play around with how he was accenting, I could get lost. And here I'm
Mm.
trying to hold down three very simple notes, and I'm fucking it up because Brendan has like just kind of gone off into the ether for a minute.
He's
But
hitting that bell. What the fuck? That bell. He's just hitting that bell. What the? What is,
my idea was that they could actually be totally free, and I would always be there to come back to.
you were the root.
And
You were the
so yeah,
anchor.
so that was so this is what I'm focused on. Over time, like then I go out and I try doing my own solo thing. I'm trying to figure out how to sing and do
Yeah.
this stuff and I can't do too much during that either, but I'm trying to do my idea of music because
Yeah.
I'm not going to stop. And then the Methetics come along, and then there's this different kind of a freedom. At the same time, Kuriki comes along, and I can just sort of be a member of a band,
Mm.
be a background singer, a backing vocalist instead. And and I only sing where I'm able to sing. That's
Yeah.
what my backing vocals in Kuriki were about. It's just those points where I was able to do it. And then the Mesthetics is this other movement which I had already started to formulate when
Mm.
I lived in Italy before I came back in 2015. I had already started to put together music with musicians who would drop by and I could just get my ideas going about what could happen with an instrumental kind of music.
Mm.
Came home and I played that music for Brendan. Brendan brought that, he said, Anthony is the
Yeah.
man I would add to this mix. So
Wow.
then we started playing, and that's how the Methetics started. But yeah, it's really just that there's such different types of, and I mean, 15 years have passed when
Wow.
the aesthetics start to play. We play our first show. Brendan and I realized we played in a band for 15 years, and then we literally did not play live for 15 years. And
Wow.
now we're doing our first show.
Wow.
It was almost 15 years to the month. Like we were a couple of months off.
Was it when you hooked up with him, was it like we're simpatico? I mean, was this like we never left, or was it like
Oh yeah.
we got a date?
It's very easy to write music and talk about music and make things work. I mean, writing with them aesthetics was just bam, bam, bam. We
Wow.
were we were working as a band to write much less than we were performing. Like the performing actually started to take over how
Mm,
often we got together to write. Like it
sure.
started to surpass that very quickly because it didn't take us that long to be happy with what we were writing. It was just weird. And then Ricky was working
Yeah.
in just the opposite way, and we wrote music for 3 years before we played our first show.
Wow. I was listening to some aesthetics, and there's a song. I think I heard it on like a Tiny Desk concert. You guys did like a Tiny Desk concert, which
Yep.
seems kind of awkward. Those whole that I don't know if it's a good, was that a good thing? It seems a little
It's kind
awkward.
of cool because it makes you approach what you're doing differently. You can't
Sure.
be loud, you're literally in the offices where other people are
Yeah.
working. So Anthony put up his sound and Bob immediately came over and was like, "You have to turn that down." Anthony was kind of like, "Whoa." And a lot of, especially then when we're a three-piece, Anthony's pedals are such an enormous part of the band that he
Wow.
has to get his amp sort of cooking at a certain
Oh
level to get
yeah.
all that stuff working. So it is a little bit odd when it comes to that. But otherwise, I find it really great and challenging. I would love to be able to do like acoustic, almost type of sets where Brendan's playing quieter and we're
Yeah.
playing acoustically, and just to find out how do you express the music now, that
Wow.
kind of thing. But
I think the song that I listened to, it blew me away. It was like Quantum Bath or something.
Quantum Path, yeah.
Quantum Path. Damn, that I was. It was like physics. There's so much going on. I was like, how do they? What? And then no one's reading music. This is all fill, all tone. I was blown away, man. That's a great jam. That's a really great song.
Yeah, it's just, Anthony's crazy, man. So he's doing so much, like, you know, in terms of guitar, just flashing lights and crazy shit flying and, past you
That was great. He's
more
like,
than you can comprehend. That me and Brendan are just kind of like organizing it in a way that we could, and I always said that Anthony tried to make us jump through a little tiny ring, and then
wow.
I would examine the ring until we could like kind of make,
Yeah.
and then just walk through.
I tell you
So
what,
we,
man. When I listen to Anthony, it's like he's like the he's just like an embodiment of like a really cool Wes Montgomery. I mean, he is just fantastic. I Are you guys going to do any more live shows or anything?
Oh
Or
yeah, we played a lot this year, and we just kind of hit the break. And then the next bigger thing we're doing is going to England in February,
oh
and
wow,
Ireland, and then we are really kind of playing here and there, and then going back to Europe in the summer where we're taking the shows with James Brandon Lewis. We're like a
yeah,
quartet with James.
yeah, right,
So
right, right.
he's going to the English dates. And then the summer dates we've been putting together since the last record came out, but um, his agents that book, more
Mhm.
jazz oriented, they get you
Mm,
to these jazz festivals. We're trying to get that done in the summer. There may be another tour we do with him. There's parts of the States we haven't done with him. We haven't gone to
yeah,
Japan with him. We haven't gone to Australia with him,
yeah.
South America. But everything's actually just getting harder to do. That's why we haven't got there. So
That's
just
crazy. Well, if you guys are local, man, I'll send me a post or something like that. I'd love to be able to see you guys if you guys are in the DC area and if you guys play local, man, that'd
yeah,
be
the
great.
next thing we're supposed to do, I think, is January 21st, opening for Kingface. And
January 21st. I'm going to see
yeah,
what
old
happens.
friends are kind of doing a show because someone's, I think, re-releasing material, or maybe they've made new material, but they're doing a show. So they asked
That's
us to
awesome.
open. So
I'm
yeah,
there. I'm there. That's
okay.
awesome. All
Well,
right.
cat,
We're gonna do it. We're gonna do a test. Are you ready?
I'm gonna try.
All right. So I'm gonna test Joe Lally on his on one word synonyms for bass players that have transcended the music industry. All right. So I'm gonna do as many as we can. One of the synonyms, Joe, can be pass. So that's an acceptable one.
So wait a minute. I'm saying a descriptive word because you're naming somebody?
I'm going to name someone and
Okay.
you're going to try to find some word to connect that. All right. This is not going to be easy, man, but you're Joe
This
Lally.
is a nightmare. Let's go.
All right. Are you ready? Paul McCartney.
Boy, man, one word for that guy?
Yeah.
Oh my God. Yeah, melody.
Melody. That's a pretty good one. I would say underrated. I think he's an underrated bass player.
Anyone, anyone at this point, man, if they're thinking that they know that that guy is the king. Anyway, go ahead.
That's awesome. Flea.
Flea. Wow. Man, yeah, this is a really hard thing. Energy is what comes to me when I think of Flea.
Les Claypool.
Les Claypool, I really don't know his music that well.
Mm,
He's somebody that I totally understand what's kind of beautiful about what he's doing.
yeah.
But, yeah. So
All
I'm gonna have
right. There you go. Maybe that's your homework. James Jamerson.
boy, he's the fucking king, man.
One finger wonder, man.
He really is. He does so much. He does so much, and that's like an impossible thing to describe.
Yeah. Well,
Trying to describe a bass player and what makes them who they are with one word.
undescribable is a
Really
word.
hard.
Undescribable is a word. So, all right, I got a couple more. Cliff Burton.
Say that again.
Cliff Burton.
Was he a rock and roll guy?
He was the first bass player for Metallica.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know his stuff enough, so I
There you
can't.
go. There you go. Mike Watt.
Yeah. Um, I don't know. Creative. I mean, I'm not using, he's a super busy, but still super boy. He does everything, and it's
Yeah.
just so fast, and he's just so long. Yeah, I can't. I mean, I'm not good at this. Keep going.
I know. We got a couple more. I got three more. Fat Mike.
I can't comment on his work because I don't know it.
Yep. No effects. Kim Deal.
I know the word for her.
Hmm. Pixies, Brave Breeder.
I don't want to say, I almost want to say austerity.
Austerity. That's a good word. Okay. I think you know this one. Daryl Jennifer.
Oh my God. Lightning.
I love it. Last one. Joe Lally.
Oh man, I don't know. Trying to figure shit out.
I like it. Man, listen, we're gonna wrap this up. What an honor, bro. What an honor, man.
Well, thanks for contacting me.
Man, you have no clue, or maybe you do. I mean, like as one kid who in Tennessee, right, who is never exposed to any kind of like a lot of culture, a lot of outside the box things, your energy, your story through your music and your art connected with so many people like myself. And it's funny, like even like that punk rock ethos, I always brought that with me to teaching, to be able to figure out like, well, how creative can I be with these students and these lessons? Can I do it myself? Why do I have to like always like be beholden to the man? Like, why are we doing what we're doing when I'm working with it? You see what I mean? When we're working with other teachers, you got to collaborate. And
it's the outside of the box thing.
Absolutely, absolutely. And when you're working with other teachers, you're collaborating. It's just like you're in a band, and everyone brings their artistry to that craft. And you don't want to be locked in. You want to be creative. So I often say, man, the everything I ever learned about being a teacher, I've learned in being in a band and listening to music. And so this connection is fantastic, man. I just really appreciate it. So
right on, no problem.
Thank you, everybody, for watching the Community Connection. Joe Lally, bass player extraordinaire, quantum physics, shaman, all these great things, teacher, educator, and just like, I don't know, just totally awesome dude. So, namaste, brother. I'll talk to you later, man.
Thanks for having me.